Evening people, Necros here. Today I'm putting up this video because with Guild Wars 2 being released this weekend, a small while ago there was a lot of talk about Zergs and its relationship in regards to World vs World. Not necessarily about its viability, but more about how effective Zerging itself will actually be. While this has been talked about to death and back again on public forums and the like, I don't feel yet that it's been fully explained or justified due to two main reasons. The first being that a lot of people just can't be bothered writing pages worth of text, as this is something that just can't be explained in one or two sentences. The second being that even if someone does take the time to explain in detail, a lot of people will see it, just look at it and not bother reading it, because there's just too much to read for them. Before I get into it, I'll explain just briefly about what Zergs or Zerging actually is. The term itself came from the game StarCraft, or more specifically the playable race Zerg, coincidentally, where instead of the player using a large amount of tactics or coordination to beat their enemy, they essentially just use sheer numbers to overwhelm everyone and everything in their path. It would be one of the most pure examples of strength in numbers. But how exactly does this translate into Guild Wars 2? Basically, all that translates into is just one large group of people blindly rushing into towers, keeps, supply camps, where instead of using anything of a tactical nature, they simply just use their sheer numbers to kill everything off, take it, and move on. However, one thing that needs to be thought upon is how much coordination is actually needed for a large group of people to turn into some sort of minute, semi-coordinated fighting force, and not just a giant mosh of people attacking stuff. That question itself is a hard one to answer. Does a small amount of people putting up the odd piece of siege equipment quantify that the group is no longer a Zerg, or does it need to be along the scale that almost everyone has a job that's beyond attack this and is doing it? That's something I can't answer, and I doubt you could either, as there's just too much variance to fit the criteria of the actual question. But aside from the last two questions, there's one question I can actually answer to a degree, and that's how efficient is a Zerg? Do take note though that I didn't ask is a Zerg efficient, because a Zerg can be very beneficial if it's used the right way.
It's the only thing we have in this whole map.
But how does that work, you say? Well, Zergs will be inevitable, that's just a fact of life, or at least Guild Wars 2 life. The simple act of finding a point of action within World vs World and running towards it is just too easy for a lot of people. They just want to get into the action, not worry about anything beyond what they're doing right at this very moment. But this can be a great advantage to those who like to look at the big picture, but only if you can use it right. As I said a little bit before, Zergs give people a point of action to focus on. Usually they'll be around a keep or a tower, which allows smaller, more coordinated groups to take more tactically important areas of the map, with little to no opposition. I will continue on this momentarily, but first I wish to discuss something else very quickly. A much more direct way in which a large Zerg can be beneficial to your server is at the very start of a new World vs World game. This would be the best example of how a Zerg can be advantageous to someone. Nothing will belong to anyone, anything resembling tactics won't be needed. It's simply just a race to see who can take more areas than the other server. However, that's only effective until your Zerg runs into another server's Zerg, in which you run into a stalemate, or one side demolishes the other, everybody will respawn, then it just becomes a slow drawn out battle over a tower or a keep that tends to usually go nowhere. However, with the World vs World battles being 2 weeks long, there is no way that any one Zerg can be sustained for such a long period of time. Sure, you'll have your nights where there'll be a large group running around, but after the first night or two, this is where what I was talking about before earlier will come in. This will be the area where smaller, more coordinated groups and guilds will become the much more important parties. Even the smaller and more basic guilds will be miles more useful than any Zerg. While Zergs will still be useful in their most redundant forms, their importance will have decreased dramatically in comparison to guilds and organised units. This will also be the area where thought, coordination and tactics will be the most important parts of the unit. While it may be fun to do so, taking every single building and camp is not the goal. The ultimate goal is simply getting more points than the other servers. I know, it sounds simple, right? Well, I can already say that it won't be. While that does require having the most amount of buildings for your server, or the most buildings that give the most points, holding everything for 2 weeks would take a feat much beyond what most servers would likely be capable of. People will be constantly learning better and better ways to take towers over the duration of those 2 weeks. People will become more organised, learn the tactics and general times that specific guilds will give them problems or around. Guilds will get guild towers and keeps they've claimed and fortify them, add cannons, boiling oil pits, fly their flags and emblems, building a number of pieces of extra siege equipment, and upgrading their base just in general. Effectively turning that keep into a fortified guild hall. The kind of guild hall that any size Zerg will not be able to break down the doors and take. This is where the true skill of the server will come into play. Even if an area seems untakeable, that is not so. Even smaller groups of 2 or 3 people can make a hard hit on any single base if you hit the right spot. While the number won't allow you to take larger bases, they're fully capable of stopping supply deliveries to that base, taking supply depots and defending them, because while it won't take the base, it will help in very large ways. If the base is unable to keep fixing their doors or walls, because you've taken their ability to be resupplied, that base will inevitably eventually fall. If people from that base come down to reclaim that supply depot, you should have had time to get siege equipment of your own up, making the other side need a lot more people than what's defending that supply point to actually take it, with the added bonus of having less people defending their keep, giving them less chances to harass your teammates that are laying siege to their keep. This is just one example of so many different ways in which tactics and coordination will be needed in the later stages of a world versus world match, something Zergs will not be capable of doing. Another example of such a thing is also the video you've been watching while I've been rambling away. This video was taken on the last beta weekend event, probably a few hours before the servers were shut down. We were versing the Crystal Deserts and the Isles of Jathmir. Apologies if I pronounced their name wrong. The server I was on was literally pushed to our main base, and it was just our servers group running into their groups. We'd push them back. Once we'd push them far enough, they'd just use their siege equipment from their last keep, wipe out our entire group, and we'd just rinse and repeat. I took part in that for about half an hour before my guildmate and I simply just went, screw it, this is going nowhere, let's go take a supply camp. With just the two of it, we took a supply camp, got supply, defended it, even to the point where they were sending siege golems at us. While teammates would trickle in and grab supply for siege equipment, this little act started, for lack of another word I can't think of right now, a chain reaction, which allowed us after about an hour to take our first tower back. Then we started working on taking our keep back by taking their supply camps and stopping them from leaving their keep. We were well on our way to taking back ground before the server was shut down. And do keep in mind that this was only over a 2-day period. In a 2-week environment, who knows how much we would have been able to take back. But the simple fact was that the other server had taken too much for their numbers being able to defend everything they had. I hope everything I've said today has explained to a degree the role and usefulness of Zergs in the nature of world vs world and Guild Wars 2. As a last note, if this video has convinced you that you'd like to be in a guild for things like world vs world, if you're not already in a guild, I encourage you to check out the guild that I will be in upon release. We're calling ourselves the Aces. We're a small group at the moment, but very, very friendly and helpful group. If you're interested, come check us out. The link will be in the description. I thank you for listening, and until next time, I bid you a good day.
Did we take out all the suits? They're all dead. Oh my god, man. That... Oh my god. That's sick.